Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. This is Shari Berg. I'm the president and founder of The Right Reflection, a Pittsburgh-based copywriting service. Today I'm going to talk with you a little bit about something different than copywriting or writing tips or branding tips on social media. I know those are the topics that I usually cover. Today I thought we'd try something a little bit different, so I hope you'll indulge me. I think you will enjoy today's conversation that we're going to have with Jeff Vande Zande. Jeff teaches fiction writing, screenwriting, and film production at Delta College in Michigan. He is also an award-winning short film producer, and his short films have been accepted over 200 times in national and international film festivals. He's also a fiction book writer and has had several pieces published. But that's not what we're talking with Jeff about today. Today, we are going to talk about his newfound love of creating things out of Burl. If you don't know what that is, please stick around and watch our interview, and hopefully you will learn something about Burl bowls and how to use your creative juices to do something completely outside of what you ever thought you might be able to do. Thanks for joining us, and keep watching. Joining me today is Jeff Vande Zande, and I've asked him on the show to talk with us a little bit about a side hobby that he has, or a creative outlet, as he likes to call it, which has to do with these items right here. I have mine, called a Burl bowl. So as you can tell, I'm a fan. Jeff, could you give us a little bit of information about how you got started with these Burl bowls? What inspired you?
Yeah, I actually remember it quite clearly, and I don't know why I'd never really paid attention to them before. And maybe the pandemic was ripe for new discoveries. But this past May, I was fly fishing up on a river in Michigan, and I noticed where I get out of the river to go back to camp this large growth on a tree. The tree itself, the trunk was only about that big around, and then it expanded out, and then it came back down. And I could also tell the tree was on its last legs. And I've gotten out of that spot on that river for 20 years. And so it has to have been there. And I just never noticed. Maybe it was because we'd gone in May and it was earlier and not as much leaves had sprouted yet. But anyway, this thought in my head came and said, I bet you I could make that into a bowl. I bet you that could be burrowed down. I didn't know anything about Burl. Didn't know that there would be amazing patterns inside. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you've seen this one, but this, and it's a beast. This is
Wow,
what it turned out to be.
That's the original Burl that you.
That's the original Burl bowl. And that's really kind of what I got to put it down. It's heavy.
It looks heavy.
That's what, when I was drilling into that and then eventually grinding out the inside, that's when I started seeing these beautiful patterns and realizing that there's much more to this than just having the potential bulk to make a bowl, but that there's a beauty in the wood and what the burl, the disease does. And I've made some discoveries. It really took off from there. I made that bowl, and that was because in May I saw it, and I told myself, well, when we come back to fish in June, I'm going to bring a pruning saw. I cut down on the burl, and I made that in probably about 3 days. When I look at it now, I would have ground much more on it because I think there's even more beautiful patterning underneath. But obviously that's the initial one, so I'm not going to monkey with it. It is what it is. But yeah, from there, I started really looking for burls on these fly fishing trips. And one of the things I learned too is the moisture in the air around a river makes the trees more susceptible to growing burls. Burls typically happen when the tree has been damaged in some kind of way, and the burl is similar. You can almost think of it as a scab, but then it can also develop into a tumor of sorts that can choke off the tree. If the burl I've been told if the burl goes all the way around, it can stop nutrients and whatnot from moving up and down the trunk. And that's where I'm starting to notice now when I'm out in the woods that when there are dead trees, I'll look and like, oh, there's a rotted burl on it. Typically it's hard to harvest a burl from a tree that's been down for long because it starts to rot pretty quickly.
Is that because burl is a fungus? From what I was reading a little bit, it seems like most of them are fungus based.
Yes, like the one that you have, that bowl is from a cherry tree, and it's a really common disease around rivers here in Michigan. It's called black knot fungus, and it spores out and spreads the disease pretty readily. If you find one, you'll see them on other trees around the around that particular tree as well. And it's a big deal for people who actually have ornamental and have what would be orchards of fruit-bearing trees. It's one thing for me. I see them and it's like, oh, good, more product. And for somebody who grows trees, it's like, oh no, because once it's there, it's really hard to get rid of, from what I've heard.
And does it spread from tree to tree? Is it contagious that way? No.
Yeah, in the spring, the burls, you'll see the galls. And that technically what you have is from a gall, not a burl. They're two different things. I don't completely know the difference, but it is something to do with how they grow. But yes, in the spring, they're real gooey and they're bleeding sap, but they're also spreading spores in the air from tree to tree. So yeah, that's how it grows. Okay. So, yeah, maybe some of it is having an eye or seeing the potential in things, but this is what they look like. And you can even see the shine coming off. Like here, there's a that's a big piece of it makes the tree kind of bleed sap.
I was gonna say, it looks an awful like hardened sap
yeah, and it will really, this kind of stuff really gums up your tools, and it's kind of a pain. But underneath this, is this.
How long does it take you for each bowl that you make, or each product? Because I guess you're making more than bowls now too, correct?
Yes, actually, I've expanded, and my kind of fixation right now is in boxes. And it's fun adding the hardware, the hinges, and finding decorative little clasps for the front. Typically, 3 days to get started, to get it, and then there's the drying process on the polyurethane that can take a little longer. But yeah, typically I tend to work at something very similar to the way I work at my writing. If I'm working on something, I'll put in a 6 to 8 hour day, and you can go along, and some of them are, like this one is quite a bit smaller. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the work is in the drilling and burrowing this out, because I'm just using drill bits, and then there's these sanding discs that you can put on the end of a drill, and it'll help hollow out the inside.
Looking at that one right there that you just held up, it's funny because each one of them that I see that you post on your social media just automatically makes me think of like a use for it. And that one that you just held up, it kind of looks like it might make a nice gravy boat the way it's shaped. Yeah. Actually, it's in time for Thanksgiving.
And yeah, there is a little, unfortunately for that, there's a little hole here. And yeah, the wood kind of tells you what it wants to be. I would never plug that with wood filler or anything. It's just what happens. Some of the bigger ones, I think, could make, nice centerpieces.
Oh, yes.
This is from actually my neighbor's mother's yard. She had a big tree cut down, and I'm still pulling projects out of there, but she had a big tree cut down. They didn't know what they had, so they just cut up this huge, it must have been the size of a medicine ball, and they just cut it up with a chainsaw. So I'm trying to use, this was didn't look anything like this, but this was one of the pieces, and you can see on the back side, the tree itself. And then this was what grew on it, this real bumpy burl. And then I've recently, this is one of the boxes that I made from that same tree. But you open it up, got a nice declivity there. This is one of the
make that a thing for hiding stuff in, that you didn't want it to be obvious, hiding keys or looking at that. It took me a minute to get that it was an opening box.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is the first one I got to put some of my, I don't know if you can see that little foot on there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it needed to be, it wouldn't sit, it kind of tipped. So it needed that stability on that side. But I happened to order, you couldn't just order 1 foot. So I ordered a number. So I got this idea in my head that, well, it'd be fun to make a box and put the feet on them. And that's actually this is my most recent project. You can see I'm getting a little fancier.
Oh, yeah.
With the clasps. And then this one, wow. My first attempt at a music box. So it does have the components in there for a music box.
Now, before you started doing these, did you do anything creative like this with woodworking your hands before, or was this all new to you?
And that song's just going to have to play out. It doesn't stop until it stops. No, I mean, I was always decent with home projects, but it was always utilitarian in nature, making shelves or what have you. But no, I'd never done any kind of woodworking before. This one, actually, the music box I attempted, because the sides can be kind of ugly. I took a shot at painting. So there's the little moon and the river there to go along with the song.
Ooh, pretty good to me.
I got a little bit more to go on that for some polyurethane. And I've got a finial coming. You had a lamp that's part that spins on the top that can sometimes be decorative. I've got a video coming that kind of looks like a full moon, and I'm going to add that to the top of the music box, because right now when you open it, if I had it on a table, it would fall over because the lid is heavier than the base. So if I have that finial, it'll stop and it'll still be sitting upright. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting kind of problem solving that goes into it too, which is kind of fun. My creative outlet has always been the more cerebral writing stuff, and there's really something satisfying, especially when we spend so much of our time with a phone in our hands, to have wood in your hands, tools in your hands, the occasional abrasion on your hands I've had the drill slip out when it's had a sanding disc on it and peel some skin off, but no major injuries yet.
Now, do you always know the minute you see one of the trees that have these formations, the burls, do you always know the minute you look at it what that's going to be, or does it take you a while to envision it?
I can see the potential. There's a lot that I just bypass. That either the tree is still way too alive, because trees can live with these burls and galls on them too. So I really try not to take down a tree that one is either just too big. I mean, anything thicker than that, I don't want to cut it down, which is hard sometimes because you'll see trees like this big around with the trunk, and way up, you'll see huge, beautiful burls. But I can't bring myself to cut down a tree just to get a burl when I know if I just keep looking, I'll find a tree that's struggling. And also, if it is a tree that's pretty well alive, but you can tell the burl's going to take it out in a year or two, that's a trick too, working with the green wood. And yours was green, and you can probably see that there are 2 cracks in it. on.
Yeah, there's, well, let me get close enough. There's one there.
Yeah, and it has like a corresponding one on the other
On the
side.
other side, yeah.
And I just tried it now. I mean, there's nothing when it's green like that. There's not a lot you can do about the cracks. It's a matter of where the tree is holding moisture. But I guess like the closer you get to the pith, which is like the center of the tree, center of the trunk, there's more moisture there. So when a piece of wood is shrinking as it loses moisture, I think I read like the outer surface shrinks 12% and the inner shrinks 16%. And that's why it cracks. That's about all I understand of the physics beyond that. But you can slow that process down. I learned pretty quickly not to bring the finished products in the back room where I was keeping them, because my wife runs a pretty heavy duty dehumidifier back there. And sometimes you finish a product, nothing, you'd wake up the next morning and there'd be a significant crack, just because of how much it dried out just being in that back room. So I did get in the habit of starting to keep them in the garage for a couple of months before I bring them in. And now even when I bring them in, they're going down into our basement and trying to ride them out for at least 6 months. Has that one seemingly cracked anymore?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And it sits right on my dining room table. It's been a great conversation piece.
Oh, great.
People come by, everybody, as soon as people see it, they ask me about it right away. And so then I have the story to tell about how I got it. Pretty cool.
Yeah, you are my first customer. And I've since sold a few more. I'm not hardcore on the selling yet. I'm trying to build up some inventory, which I think I do have. I think, you know, some of these you've seen, but people seen I made this one with incorporated the squirrel skull, and that ended up being a box as well. I think the boxes seem appealing to people. This is one of the first ones I did with one of those pieces of gall. So this is the same material that yours was. And I was grinding it down. And this is one of the things I learned too, that there are no mistakes. This was kind of a bowl, but I ground down too far and ground through. But I just end up making the mistakes part of the thing. Same goes here. This was solid, but I went through it with the grinder. But then I thought, okay, well, instead of tossing it, make that part of the design. So as I've mentioned in a couple of tweets, the wood kind of tells you what it's going to be. You know, you only have so much control.
So how many boxes and how many different things do you have now in the inventory?
I would say it's getting closer to even. The boxes started out as just an anomaly, and then it's kind of all I've been making. Although there's a website that I discovered called Lumberjocks, which has been around for years, and I would have had no reason to know about it. But I think there are 13,000 woodworkers on this website, and you can ask questions. I've had a lot of questions regarding finishes. Like I noticed that polyurethane will sometimes darken the wood much darker than I want it to be. So I was able to ask questions on there. Is there a different product I can use that'll still give me the gloss, but not darken the wood so much? It's great for that, but you can also share your projects on there. And it's been very uplifting to get really glowing feedback from these people who've been woodworking for many, many years when I don't even have a year under my belt yet. And one guy noticed my bowls and he said, you know, I have this piece of manzita tree, and that's from California. And he said, I've had it in my shop for years. And he said, do you want it? And he said, by that, I don't mean I'll sell it to you. He said, I'll send it to you and I'll even pay the shipping. I just want something done with it. And from what I can tell with what you're doing with these Burl bowls, this might be up your alley. And he sent it to me, and it was very intimidating, and I sat on it for about a month. But then I'd done like 4 boxes in a row, and I was tiring a little bit of the box process. So I decided to take that manzanita, and it's this beautiful, I don't know how if it's coming across, but it's this beautiful, almost red inside.
Wow.
The whole thing is it's very pretty, but it was a much, I don't know if it's obvious that this is a bowl, but yeah, it's a declivity, probably about 4 inches deep. But it was very, very hard. Almost anything I put in here, the grinder even, it was leaving significant burn marks because the wood was so hard. So it took a lot of sanding discs to sand out all those burn marks and get that nice red interior. But yeah, I'm probably about 70-30 right now. Still a lot of bowls. That's what I made, and I don't know why a piece struck me that, oh, that looks thick enough and all the way around enough that maybe it could be a box. But I think you saw the first box. I don't have that one here. That's down in the basement, but that was also from that same wild cherry gall that your piece is from. Not the same tree, but the same kind of tree.
Do you ever envision that you might be able to make anything else besides the bowls and the boxes?
I've thought about it, and I have. I made a lamp. I had a piece of burl about that tall, was on a branch, but it had rotted through most of the inside. There was just like probably 2 inches in the middle, so I actually put I had an extender, and I taped a paddle bit to the extender and put it up, and I was able to get a hole all the way through, so I was able to run electrical wire through it. And I do have a lamp, and I did make my wife a little side table where she can, it even had like a knot hole in it, so she can set her drink right in the knot hole and put a plate on the little table. Because I was noticing that she was always using the dehumidifier. We have a lot of dehumidifiers in the house, and she was using the living room dehumidifier as like a TV tray. So I thought, oh, I could make her a table. But yeah, it's not as I mean, a lot of it is determined by the shape of the wood, and it's surprising. I don't have this one here either, but you never know what you're going to discover when you start to cut down into the wood either. Something that looks solid can have a big knot hole in it, and the knot hole just falls right out. And now you have a box, and it has a hole in it, and you just have to be open to the idea of, okay, well, this is a box that has a hole in it, then that's part of its appeal, is this kind of primitive artwork. As far as like woodworking, some of the amazing stuff I see on lumberjacks, tables and dressers, and just amazing stuff that these people are making. I can't do that. As I often joke, I've never met a right angle that I can't make wrong.
Yeah, that's kind of, I always admire when people can do stuff with their hands, because I cannot. It is not where my creative talents lie. And it usually doesn't turn out well if I try to do something crafty. So I'm just blown away when I see anything like this.
Yeah, there are a lot of, I mean, I'm still waiting for it to pass, because sometimes things do. I during the pandemic, I took up my bass guitar again, and I was playing a lot, every night, and learning more and more songs. And I don't know, bass guitar is just something you really can't play by yourself for long. It's kind of meant to be an accompanying instrument. So then it was just like, oh, I'm done with that. Like, I haven't played the bass now pretty much since I started doing the woodworking, which is probably making me hold back on buying a whole lot in terms of equipment, because I don't want to get to that place and be like, okay, why do I have a bandsaw? Why do I have all this stuff when I don't woodwork anymore?
Right. At what point will you decide that it's not just a passing fancy and you're going to keep up with it?
Probably if I'm still at it after a year. We're heading into a tricky part. I did the work for most of these through the summer in the backyard on a chair, and I just had an upside down one of those plastic storage units. I just had that flipped upside down. That was my table, and I just sat in the chair. Didn't have to worry about sawdust a lot because it just blew out of the yard. And although the backyard, there's a section where now when I walk on it, I realize I'm walking on about 4 inches of sawdust. But the carpenter ants are coming and chewing that up as well. So it's, I don't know. I've since moved into the garage, and I have a little table set up on some sawhorses. The challenge will be, can I keep this going through the winter without like an indoor workshop? I certainly will be making less at the very least. Maybe a project a week, where right now it's about 3 projects a week that I'm working on or finishing. So maybe in the winter, my sites will turn more on trying to develop a website, trying to figure out, researching some woodworking shows and some art fairs in Michigan. A lot of them are juried, so you don't just because you're willing to purchase a table doesn't necessarily mean you get to come. They want to see your artwork, and I've been told that might entail hiring a professional photographer to take pictures of the work. They're not looking just for pictures that you snap off of your cell phone. So that part, I don't know, it's like anything else. The creative act, be it this or writing, that's the fun part. The challenging part is the marketing, all the other stuff you don't want to do. And
Right.
yet you have to do it if you want to have it be more than a hobby. Isn't a Joseph Campbell, the guy who wrote Hero with a Thousand Faces, said, if you have a job that you love, it's no longer a job, and vacations become boring because you want to get back to work. It's invigorating. It's not something you need a vacation from. It's something that you're passionate about. And he was kind of saying that's what people should strive for, is to find an occupation that you love, and then you'll never work a day in your life because it won't be work. I'd love to turn this into at least a possible retirement income, even if it's just a few thousand extra dollars a year. That would be fun. It's fun to have someone like yourself purchase one and post a picture of it. That meant a lot to me, more than you could probably know, as somebody who, you also have a little bit of imposter syndrome doing this. I'm 51 years old, and suddenly, without any history of woodworking, suddenly I'm making these things. And there's a period where friends and family are looking at it going, these are really good, these are amazing. It's like, yeah, you're just blowing smoke though. You have to tell me that because I'm your friend, or I'm your husband, or I'm your dad. But then when I was posting them on Lumberjacks and getting feedback on Twitter, I was like, maybe I'm onto something. Maybe I actually have a talent. Maybe not everybody can do this or even see the potential. I don't know if you've come across this when I've talked about it, and I don't have any shame in talking about it. It was also a part of what helped me stay sober. During the pandemic, I realized that I have an issue with alcohol. It had been somewhat obvious in other parts of my life, but it really kind of exacerbated with all that downtime and the stress and everything else. So I quit. As a matter of fact, today marks 6 months since I've had a drink. And one of the challenging parts is I was never a day drinker. It was always that 6 o'clock cocktail hour kind of thing. And I found I needed something to do at that time of night, because I was so used to, I'll pour myself a whiskey. That's actually the name of my woodworking company, is Zero Whiskey Woodworking.
I like that. Perfect.
Yes, it was. So I would say the woodworking saved me on that front, because it gave me something mind occupying to do. And if I found in those early months of quitting, if I could make it to 8 o'clock at night and I hadn't poured a drink, then I was fine. But from 6 to 8 seemed to be kind of the witching hour where my body and mind were used to, like, no, now we unwind, now pour a drink and another one and another one. And so yes, that's been helpful. And I think I'm largely over the hump now in terms of really bad cravings, but the woodworking has stayed. And I think it's become its own thing. It's become more than just keeping me away from Jameson's.